When thinking of medieval Europeans, we usually conjure up images of linest, smelly, and disease-ridden people spattered in mud and dunk. But is there any truth in this? If you've ever wondered if the Middle Ages was really as disgusting as it's cracked up to be, look no further in this video. We're going to take a look at 10 of the appalling habits that medieval Europeans thought were perfectly acceptable. Number 1. Cod pieces. Not all of the disgusting habits of medieval Europeans had to do with cleanliness. Most people would agree that this fashion trend would be considered pretty awful by today's standards when they were first invented. Cod pieces were to preserve a man's modesty, as the hose, worn under a tunic, were two separate leg pieces. As shorter tunics became the fashion, it was necessary to have a piece of material that would cover the exposed area between the two hose legs to cover his privates. A man attached a decorative pouch or sack to this area, highlighting its presence. However, as the Middle Ages were defined by male-dominated feudalism, it wasn't long before the cod piece was used to showcase a man's marital virility, and nobles were increasingly elaborate and ornate designs showing off their packages. Number 2. Child marriages. Although these happened today, child marriages were wholly accepted and relatively common among European noble families. The families arranged the marriages, which were usually used to secure a political alliance between two countries or families. Often young girls in their nobility would be sent away from their families to a foreign country with only a few handmaidens for company. Girls were married off as young as 9 years old, although they were usually married to boys who were in their teens. Still, it was not unusual for a young girl to be married to a significantly older man. Matilda, the daughter of Henry II of England, was married to the Saxon Duke, Henry the Lion, when she was around 11, and he was in his late 30s. It wasn't just child brides that were coming. The groom was often no older than 15 or 16 in many cases. In 1270, Elizabeth of Sicily was around 8 or 9 when she was married to the future Eltis IV of Hungary, who was about a year younger than her. In general, the age that a couple would wed in medieval times was pretty low, 12 for women and 14 for men. But it was really only the noble families that practiced arranged child marriage. Most couscous women and men married in their late teens or early 20s, although the consummation of these child marriages was not supposed to happen until the girl was at least 15. I think we can all agree. This habit is still pretty repellent by modern standards. Number 3. Consummation of noble marriage. Talking of noble marriages brings us to another weird and some might say disgusting medieval habit, that of the bedding ceremony. Most, if not all, noble marriages were for alliance and the merging of two families. Aims as such, it was usually crucial to the arrangement that the marriage be probably consummated to prevent a chance of an annulment further down the road. Commonly, the couple's modesty was preserved using a bed curtain, and the witnesses kept a respectable distance at the edges of the room. However, occasionally, when the stakes were particularly high, the act itself had to be physically witnessed until completion. Most of us would find this sort of thing incredibly uncomfortable and embarrassing, especially given the ages of many newlywed noble couples. Some even refused to participate in this tradition, including King Charles I of England, who allegedly barred his bedroom door on his wedding night. That being 000341, said some noble couples would have expected and accepted this weird tradition. In fact, it may have been to their benefit, as if the union produced a child, no one could dispute that the baby was a legitimate. Here, number 4. Waste management. Without proper knowledge of germs and bacteria, management in the Middle Ages was particularly disgusting. This became a problem during the High Middle Ages, when the population boomed and cities became more crowded without indoor plumbing. Most people used chamber pots or buckets, to allow them to go to the toilet. Indoors, especially at night, but these still had to be emptied somewhere. Most medieval cities had backhouses built over a massive cesspit into which human waste could be deposited. In castles, toilets were often built, sticking out of the side of a turret, so excrement could fall directly into the moat, which cannot have a pleasant smell on warm summer days. Another solution that some cities utilized was building public toilets on bridges, so the waste would be washed away in the river. It was hardly the most sanitary method, considering most people use the river for cleaning clothes and themselves. Number 5. Intestinal worms. The increase in human waste and living in densely populated areas brought some obvious issues. What can we do if we can't throw it all in the river? Well, one solution was to use it as fertilizer. The city's cesspits had to be cleaned regularly, and much of the waste became farm fertilizer in smaller communities. Chamber pots were often emptied onto the compost. However, without modern treatment techniques, this frequently led to infestations of intestinal parasites. Researchers estimate that around 1/4 to 1/3 of medieval people had intestinal worms at the time of their death. The same research determined that the ones more likely to suffer from intestinal worms, most commonly roundworm and whipworm, were. Friar, a study in Cambridge, found that 58% of Austinian friar were infected with these worms, which range from 5 to 30 centimeters long, compared to only 32% of those buried in the Paris cemetery. The researchers were surprised by the findings, since the friars actually had better hygiene facilities than the general populace, such as purpose-built latrines and hand-washing facilities. The study concluded that it was because the friars were pretty self-sufficient, growing food for their own consumption. Their dedication to gardening meant that the friars were continuously reinfecting themselves when they used the feces from their own latrines to fertilize their fruits and vegetables. Number 6. One set of clothes. Nowadays, we are used to changing into loungewear or pajamas at the end of the day, or when we get home from any outdoor activities with modern fabric-making techniques. It's easy to forget that not long ago, all fibers used to be spun and woven by hand-making fabric from plant fibers, and wool was laborious and finished. Fabric was pretty expensive, as fabric took so long to make. It was common for the poorest peasants to only own one set of clothes. These were usually layered with woolen clothing, worn over the top of thin summer clothes in the winter. This limited wardrobe meant you worked, played and wept in the only clothes you had, especially on cold winter nights. Clearly this meant all sorts of dirt would be brought into the bed, and it also meant that cleaning your clothes was not a regular occurrence. The peasantry would probably have cleaned their clothes more in the summer, when drying garments was easier, as was forgoing clothes altogether. At times, in order to wash them, most people, including even peasants, had 2 sets of clothing, one for everyday wear and one for special occasions. Not changing or washing clothing regularly led to all sorts of bug and lice infestations, not to mention skin complaints. Number 7, food. Although the disgusting habits of medieval Europeans span religion and class, the nobles definitely formed their own decadent brand of awful, while the medieval peasantry was just happy not to starve. European nobles had a vast array of bizarre dishes to delight and amuse guests during lavish banquets, from hedgehogs, porpoises, and cats to blood-sucking lamp. There wasn't much the European nobility wouldn't feast on. In fact, nature clearly didn't provide weird enough things to eat, as evidenced by the cockatrice of pig and chicken sewn together. Another popular dish was the helmeted, which isn't as rude as it sounds. It was a chicken cooked and served. Wearing the coat of arms of one of the lords, while presented to look like it was riding a pig. Other grotesque spectacles included roast chickens that sang as if they were alive, roast animals that breathed fire, live chickens that were made to look like they were roasted, and pies filled with live birds or frogs. Number 8. Medical treatments. Medicine in the Middle Ages became intertwined with Christianity, and many ailments were put down to living a sinful life or heavenly influence. But this didn't stop medieval physicians from prescribing a slew of disgusting cures. Although disgusting, many of these remedies did work. For example, snail slime for burns and scalds, an Anglo-Saxon remedy for stine, made from onion, garlic, bull's gall, and wine, is currently being investigated for treatment against the antibiotic-resistant MRSA bug. Due to its excellent antibiotic properties, other recipes are a bit more outlandish, including burning and pounding an owl and mixing it with boar's grease as a remedy for gout fade and gutted cat, stuffed with hedgehog grease, bear fat, and resins for a throat infection, and bleeding a patient to cure an imbalance in the blood. Number 9. Personal hygiene. Levels of personal hygiene in the medieval period varied 0930 from person to person, but they undoubtedly were nowhere near today's standards. For one thing, water had to be fetched from wells and streams, meaning washing was generally a considerable effort. Washing in warm water was even more of an effort. Most resorted to a splash of cold water on their face in the morning. Bathing was a luxury not afforded to many, and usually consisted of a person squatting in a barrel and pouring a jug of warm water over themselves. Kings, on the other hand, would make a great show of bathing, even building special baths that allowed them to invite their fellow nobles to join them. It was a common thought that too much washing, especially with warm water, could weaken the body. As most peasants worked in the fields, washing the dirt off was probably common, but without knowledge of germs and bacteria, it was usually superficial. Add to that the reluctance to get undressed in the winter, and the raw sewage often dumped into rivers and washing didn't do much to stop the spread of illnesses in the home. Bugs and lice were rife, as bedding made with grass and straw made a comfortable home for several unwanted visitors. Floors, too, would be strewn with reeds and straw, but as only the top layer would be changed regularly, the fresh layer would hide a multitude of disgusting fluids and dirt. Contrary to popular opinion, the medieval Europeans did clean their teeth. They used hazel twigs or racks, but did not brush as regularly as we do today. Number 10. Urine detergent. So you're a medieval peasant who hasn't changed out of their clothes in months, and it's finally warm enough to wash your garments. You're going to give them a really good clean, right? Without a laundry machine, washing clothes was a laborious and time-consuming activity. It usually involved taking your undergarments down to the local river to clean them, hopefully, upstream from any bridge toilets, as clothes could be pretty stained, and a stained remover had not yet been invented. The medieval Europeans did the next best thing and soaked their clothes in ammonia to bleak out the stains. And where did they get the ammonia? Yep, that's right, from urine. In fairness, it wasn't only medieval. Europeans using this trick, urine, had been used to launder fabric since ancient Rome. After soaking your clothes in urine, you would take them for a good wash, sometimes using homemade lye soap for MH after a thorough scrub. They would be left to dry in the sun. Once dry, you could get dressed again, knowing that the next laundry day was probably months away. Do you know of any disgusting habits or trends from olden times? Let us know in the comments below. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history? Impress your friends and predict the future more accurately based on past events. If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new captivating history book club by clicking the first link in the description. to learn more about medieval Europe. Check out our book, Medieval Europe, a captivating guide to European history during the Middle Ages, starting with the fall of Rome through Byzantium, the Carolingian Empire, and the Crusades to the Renaissance. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Also grab your free mythology bundle, ebook, while it's still available. All links are in the description. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.